Country 107.1, Dean Brody, that's Dirt Road Scholar at 8:28 on the More Music Morning Show. Steve Fanning, how are you? All right, so we are going to get to a little bit of Garth Brooks and Poverty Plainsman, and we're going to have this little chat with Alex. I don't know if you've ever heard of this girl before. She's made headlines all over the Fraser Valley. Alexandria Mitchell is her full name, of course. She's a part of something called Plug Out Tune In, which actually got her to Copenhagen this year for that climate change summit. We're going to be talking to her in about 10-15 minutes, find out exactly what that experience was all like, and see if she still has any hope left whatsoever. In the meantime, though, I want Grant to get a news update on at the bottom of the hour. We'll preview the Abbotsford Heat action that's taking place over the course of the next couple of days with the Manitoba Moose. They got games tomorrow. Country 107.1. That's Poverty Plainsman's Sister Golden Hair, the old America classic. With Steve Fanning at 8:43, still 9 degrees in the valley and still absolutely log-jammed on the Abbey Mission Bridge heading southbound into Abbotsford. If you're coming from Mission into Abbotsford, expect delays. And if you're in Abbotsford and you're expecting somebody to show up at 9 o'clock because they're coming from Mission, forget about it. They're going to be late today. And thanks for all the calls on the phone. You've been really helpful in terms of telling me exactly what's been going on over there. Hopefully things will be cleared up by about 9 o'clock, and hopefully that residual volume will burn off as well. Well, you may remember, late last year there was a climate change summit that went on in Copenhagen, Denmark, and a remarkable young woman from right here in Abbotsford, Alexandria Mitchell, who is only 16 years old, by the way, took on the responsibility of actually attending that conference and finding out a little bit more about climate change and what Canada's role in the whole thing is. And Alex, I would imagine that you probably crammed more life experience into that week than you have in the first 16 years of your life, didn't you?
Oh, yeah, you're absolutely right.
So, tell me all about it. I mean, we only have a few minutes to chat here, but I'm very curious. I mean, you could probably write a couple of books based on your experiences.
You know, I'm actually planning to. Copenhagen was an amazing experience. It was inspirational in the sense that there were 2,000 youth from across the world, all incorporated under something called Youngo. And they were all there very passionate about trying to come up with a post-Kyoto agreement for combating climate change. However, at the same time, as many people know, the negotiations didn't go as successfully as hoped for. There was so much going on. There's side events. There's acts of civil disobedience happening everywhere. And then in the Bella Center, which is where I was, the negotiations going on. And it was interesting to see, and it was we were all very hopeful for the first little while, but then towards the end, it got to be really disappointing, especially being there as a Canadian.
Okay, now I'm not surprised to hear you say that, because the news reports that we were getting here back home were not altogether encouraging for the most part. We heard that Stephen Harper was taking a fair amount of flack. What would you say is the biggest issue that you saw Canadians facing while you were there?
The erosion of the Canadian legacy in terms of our international standing as Canadians. Unfortunately, what's happened is for the inaction on our government on the issue of climate change, and again, Canada is the only G7 country with no national program to support renewable energy. What happens is Canadians that are attending these world events and everything aren't respected like we used to be when traveling. Canada has this great reputation internationally. We're known as peacekeepers. We're known as people that support human rights. And unfortunately now with this climate change issue and the fact that virtually every other country other than countries like the U.S. and China, virtually every other country is supporting action on climate change, our national government isn't. And that is causing the erosion of our legacy.
I hate to ask this question in this way, Alex, especially to somebody so young who should still have an idealistic view of the world, but whose fault is this?
Well, I think it's a fault of two different things. It's a fault of our national government. However, our national government is accountable, or should be accountable, to Canadians. And as Canadians, we have a responsibility to make sure that we hold our government accountable for the things that matter to us. So we have these issues like voter apathy, and those things need to be changed. And the only way that we can change them is to just simply get involved and join the discussions about the things that are facing us. However, I think when it comes to environmental issues, such as climate change, it's important to look at grassroots efforts. So I came home, and this is one of the biggest lessons that I learned. It's cities and provinces that are taking leadership, because unfortunately we aren't from the federal level. So as individuals, we have so much more power than we ever have before. And the actions that we take in Abbotsford and in Langley and in Chilliwack, those actions mean so much more than I ever thought that they did. So that's a really, really inspiring part of the whole climate change issue. And if we want to look at climate change, it's so big and it's so vast. How do we solve it? Well, let's unite behind small causes. Let's unite behind maintaining Burns Bog. Let's unite behind local issues here in the Fraser Valley.
You mentioned the issue of voter apathy, and most people actually do not vote for the people who represent them. In fact, most people who are poor or tired or hungry or overworked or basically living paycheck to paycheck and are just essentially on the brink of starvation do not vote. People who are demoralized tend not to cast a ballot. And unfortunately, those are the people who need the most representation in not only our local governments, but also in our federal governments and across the world. How do we get people who are completely demoralized up off their feet to make them understand that their voice actually does make a difference?
I think the way that we do that is we show that if you go out and if you try and play a role in the things that are happening in your country, in your province, and in your city, that your voice actually will be heard. Unfortunately, I feel like in many cases it isn't. However, I notice if we look at things on a smaller scale, if we look provincially, I think your voice can be heard. Federally, it's a little more difficult. But I think it's showing people that if you all do unite behind something, the more people that you get behind a cause, the more impact it has. And if you don't vote, then you really don't have a right to complain, right? You hear that all the time. So you have to make sure that your voice is heard as much as possible. And, for me, I look at environmental issues, and I have to look at them from a feasibility perspective, right? I have to look at them from saying what's possible, what's reasonable, and what can we do to make a difference. And I look at those environmental topics, but I see that it's not just environmental topics that are important to Canadians. It's the economy, and it's poverty, and it's all of these different things that are so interconnected. And as soon as we realize that they're really interconnected, then we can realize that by standing up and voicing our concerns on a specific issue that matters, to us, we can actually have a huge impact in the grand scheme of all of those issues facing us as a country.
What's next for you, Alex?
Well, I'm working on this Plug Out Tune In project. It's you can find out more information on plugouttunein.com, and I'm hoping to expand it so that it can be a method for young people to get involved in different discussions and to connect them with people across the world and people here in Canada that are interested in making change in a variety of different ways. So if you're interested, check out the website. My contact information is on there as well. And join the discussion, I guess.
Alex, how old are you?
16.
Oh man. I look at myself at 16 and we are miles apart, girl. In fact, I think you're probably more educated and more enlightened than I am at 32.
No, not at all. Everyone's got their things, right?
You're doing fantastic. Plugouttunein.com, of course, is the website. You can find out more information on what Alex is doing. Congratulations. Glad to hear you made it home safely from Copenhagen, and obviously some life experience to be had there, no question.
All right, thank you.
What your pet is really thinking